After growing the company to $50 million, they fired me in front of the entire team. The new CEO said, "You're a good leader, but you've become a bottleneck." I just smiled and walked out, knowing something he didn't. I'd already bought out our biggest vendor. The panic began when, the zenith of my career, a triumph I just presented, a monumental $50 million milestone, dissolved the moment my new CEO, Damon, rose. He adjusted his cuff links, an almost theatrical gesture, and then, with an arctic smile that belied his true intent, he shattered my world. He was firing me, right there, before the entire executive team. His voice, infuriatingly calm, announced, "As of today, Olivia will be stepping down as Chief Operating Officer." He mumbled vague platitudes about my significant contributions, then pivoted sharply. They needed less bottlenecking and more agile decision-making. My strategic discipline, a bedrock of our success, was now, he declared, a liability in their pursuit of aggressive scalability. The room went dead silent. It wasn't shock I saw in their eyes, but shame, a collective discomfort as they conspicuously avoided my gaze. He twisted my own words against me, a final, galling blow. "I believe your exact words last week were, 'We should hire more carefully and invest in development before scaling too fast.' That kind of caution has its place, but not now. Thank you for your service." It landed like a physical strike. Then he turned, as if delivering a perfectly reasonable explanation, leaving me to simply stare at this man, barely 3 months embedded in our company. And I smiled, a quiet, knowing smile. "I appreciate the clarity," I stated, my voice steady, betraying no tears, no protest, just that profound silence. Then, with deliberate calm, I stepped aside, letting him seize the projector for his Phase 2 structural optimization slides. I walked back to my office as if heading for a quick lunch, my composure absolute. They had no idea what I'd already set in motion. It began 2 months prior, the instant Damon parachuted in, handpicked by the board. I felt an immediate shift, a tangible change in the air. He was pure VC, all about rapid turnover, spreadsheet metrics, and unbridled ego. People were just numbers to him. From day one, he didn't see me as a partner. He saw me as an obstacle to be bulldozed. That hurt deeply. This wasn't merely a company to me. I'd founded its original product line 6 years ago, built the core team, even penned the damned operations manual. When our founding CEO departed, it was I who kept the ship afloat. I never craved praise, just loyalty. But I got neither. Instead, I observed the slow, insidious erosion. Meetings I was suddenly excluded from, strategies reversed without a word, a creeping sense that Damon was meticulously crafting a narrative where I simply vanished. Then one afternoon his mask truly slipped. I overheard his assistant, speakerphone blaring, scheduling lunch with our largest vendor, my vendor, the one I'd personally nurtured for 5 years. Damon was on the line. I heard him casually, chillingly state, "The idea is to phase Olivia out quietly. It'll make things smoother." They wanted to erase me, but they were late. I had already seen the storm gathering. I knew something they didn't. Our biggest vendor, Chronocore Systems, was on financially shaky ground. I'd been quietly dissecting their quarterly filings. A buyout was inevitable. It was a golden opportunity. So, I reached out to an old friend, a private equity partner in Boston. Through a holding company I discreetly established the year before, we made an offer, a clean, silent, legal acquisition. By the time Damon finally called Chronocore's CEO, smug and ready to cut me out of negotiations, he was met with a polite but firm message. Any future communication would now go through the holding company's new leadership. He never made the connection, not once. So, when he stood there, announcing my termination, that condescending smile plastered on his face, as if he'd just removed the last impediment to his brilliant Phase 2, I didn't flinch. Not a muscle, because while Damon was sharpening his axe, I was busy buying the very ground he stood on. Back in my office, I packed my life into a single cardboard box. My family photo, the brass fountain pen my team had given me, a beloved leather-bound book filled with my notes. Through the glass wall, I could see Damon still laughing with the CFO oblivious. I smiled again, a soft, dangerous smile. I knew what was coming. Tomorrow, the emails would begin. The contracts would shift. In a mere 3 days, that smug confidence would curdle into pure panic because the very heartbeat of their supply chain, the one vendor they couldn't live without, was now mine. And I was done being quiet. Friday morning, HR sent a polite, clinical email. Transition plan. Olivia, please complete the enclosed checklist. Damon asked if you'd be willing to draft a knowledge transfer document for your replacement. I actually chuckled. He fires me in front of everyone, then asks for a favor like we're swapping recipes. Amazing. I responded professionally. Camille, I'll ensure all deliverables are documented. But it wasn't just professionalism. It was strategy. Every file I handed over would be meticulously clean, precise, and yet just incomplete enough to render them utterly reliant on a partner they no longer controlled. And Chronocore Systems? They still hadn't connected the dots. Then, at 10:17 a.m., my attorney Michelle called. They've started sniffing, she said, a hint of amusement in her voice. A junior procurement manager from your old company reached out to Chrono asking about a new delivery schedule. We formally cited the recent acquisition and said the new leadership team will be handling all future discussions. She knew they'd escalate it by Monday, especially once they realized how absolutely central Chronocore was to Damon's precious Phase 2. They've got a dependency they didn't even think to vet, Michelle added. Congratulations, you own their supply chain. I leaned back, looking at the framed awards still on my shelf. Operations excellence, cost savings, strategic procurement, all earned under my watch. They used to be proud of me, until I became inconvenient. That evening, I met Clara, one of the few at Techline I still truly trusted, at our usual wine bar. She slid into the booth, her eyes wide. Everyone's talking, she whispered. Damon was strutting all afternoon, but around 3 p.m., his mood just plummeted. Something spooked him. I stirred my drink, feigning nonchalance. Chronocore? I asked. She nodded. They were supposed to finalize next quarter's contract, but the call got bounced. Legal said something about a change in ownership structure. Now Damon's demanding answers. My eyebrow went up. So he's finally paying attention. Clara leaned in. Urgent. He doesn't. No. Does he? What are you going to do? I gave her a slow, deliberate smile. Nothing, I said softly. I already did it. On Saturday, I received a meeting request, not from Damon, but from their procurement lead, Trevor. His email was hesitant. Olivia, I know things ended awkwardly, but there seems to be some confusion internally about the Chronocore contract, and you're the only one who handled those negotiations. Did he want a quick call? I didn't respond, not out of spite, but because it simply wasn't my job anymore. Instead, Michelle sent a formal letter on behalf of my holding company, Verity Partners, LLC, informing Techline that all future negotiations regarding Chronocore services would go through Verity's new client relations lead, me. Sunday evening, just after 9 p.m., my phone buzzed. Unknown caller, Damon Reeves. One missed call, one new voicemail. I didn't listen to it. Michelle had advised against it. Let your silence be the loudest thing in the room, she'd said. And she was absolutely right. Monday morning at Techline, HQ hit like a thunderclap. I woke early, brewed my coffee, and pulled up the internal dashboards I still had temporary access to. There was in angry red. Unconfirmed fourth quarter supplier contracts pending approval. That pending status would freeze 3 major product lines if unresolved. 3. At 8:02 a.m., Clara texted. Damon just stormed into the 8 a.m. all hands. Nobody knows what's going on. It looks like he hasn't slept a wink. By 10:30, LinkedIn was absolutely buzzing. A press release had gone out. Chronocore Systems announces new ownership under Verity Partners, LLC. It didn't mention my name, of course, but everyone who knew me knew. At 11:12 a.m., I received a one-line email from Damon. We need to talk urgently. I forwarded it to Michelle, who called me 10 minutes later, practically cackling. He's panicking, she said. He finally realized who bought the kingdom he thought he ruled. And the best part? I hadn't even played my next card yet. Chronocore didn't just supply software components. They handled the entire data architecture for TechLine's newest, most hyped project, an AI-powered operations hub. The very project Damon had staked his entire CEO reputation on. Without Chronocore's custom data libraries, that project would crash and burn before it even launched. I looked at the box of my old office gear, still by my entryway. Didn't matter if I unpacked it or donated it. On paper, I no longer worked at TechLine, but in practice, they now worked for me. By Tuesday morning, the storm had well and truly landed at TechLine. I didn't need internal access to see it. The tremors were rattling LinkedIn. A project manager quietly updated her status to open to work. 2 AI engineers reposted the Chronocore acquisition with ominous captions like, "Big industry moves ahead," and "One door closes, another opens." But the real fun started with a calendar invite from Damon's assistant. Emergency leadership meeting. 9 a.m. mandatory attendance. Clara texted me at 8:44 a.m. He's sweating. Literally. We all saw him walk in. Looks like someone just handed him a resignation letter written in blood. I just smiled into my coffee cup. This wasn't about personal vengeance. I wasn't interested in watching Damon implode just for kicks. But I was deeply interested in watching the board finally realize the kind of short-sighted decision they'd made, handing the keys to a man who couldn't see 3 moves ahead. That morning, Michelle and I finalized our formal licensing proposal for TechLine. It wasn't cruel. It was simply expensive. Chronocore had previously operated under a volume discount model, one I personally negotiated to optimize for their growth. That model was now officially off the table. TechLine would now get a pay-as-you-go structure, billed monthly, with a hefty premium for data hosting, integration, support, and critically, access to the proprietary AI learning modules that formed the very backbone of their next-gen operations hub. Michelle read the terms aloud, savoring each one. Standard enterprise rates, plus a 22% premium for custom dependencies, plus exclusivity protections. Oh, and public acknowledgement of Chronocore's new ownership, of course. "Let's send it before lunch," I said. "Give them just enough time to lose their appetites." That afternoon, Clara buzzed my phone again. "Olivia, the engineers figured it out. You bought Chrono. It's flying through Slack." Damon is livid. He pulled the entire DevOps team into a private meeting, locked door and all. A few minutes later, she added, "P.S. 2 directors just asked me if you're hiring." I started to type a reply, but then stopped. Better to let the uncertainty do its work. Meanwhile, Michelle received a formal response from TechLine's legal department. They acknowledged our offer, but weren't accepting it. They wanted to discuss potential alternative licensing terms. Translation: they couldn't afford it, and they were desperately hoping I'd blink. I didn't. Instead, Michelle sent a short, courteous note. As outlined in our offer, these terms are non-negotiable unless accompanied by a substantial equity stake or public acquisition offer. We understand if TechLine prefers to seek other vendors. Here's the kicker. There were no other vendors. Chronocore wasn't just their provider. It was their entire infrastructure. Switching wasn't like replacing office chairs. It would take at least 18 months to rebuild what we had developed. And they simply didn't have that kind of time. That evening, walking through my new office at Verity's downtown location, the new Chronocore HQ, I watched the construction crew finish the glass walls of our new strategy lab. I saw my team setting up whiteboards and tech screens. And for the first time in months, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long, long time: belonging. My phone buzzed again. Unknown number. Voicemail. I listened. It was Damon. His voice, for the first time, sounded a little desperate. "Olivia, this is Damon. I think we need to start over. I don't know what your end game is here, but you're putting a lot of people at risk. People who supported you for years. Just think about that. You were better than this." I just shook my head. The sheer arrogance of it, this false concern. Me, putting people at risk? This man had fired me in front of my team. He'd pushed reckless expansion, cut budgets, eliminated remote work, then blamed me when senior developers walked. And now he was the victim? Damon wasn't worried about the staff. He was worried about the board. Clara confirmed it the next morning. He tried to spin the whole vendor crisis as unexpected market volatility. The board wasn't buying it. They demanded a full audit of supplier dependencies. He deflected. They brought in an audit council. It's unraveling fast, Clara texted. I think he knows he's done. At noon, my inbox pinged. Subject: immediate assistance requested from Techline Board Chair Richard Alvarez. It was a formal request for a confidential meeting to discuss the current leadership's handling of strategic partnerships. They understood I might have insights. Now, that was interesting. I replied, Mr. Alvarez, I would be happy to make time later this week. Thursday or Friday morning would work well. Respectfully, Olivia Monroe, Managing Partner, Verity Partners. As I hit send, I leaned back, looking at a framed quote on my shelf, a gift from an old engineer. Be the kind of leader your future self won't have to apologize for. I had no apologies to make. Damon had played politics. I had built power, and the game wasn't over yet. Thursday morning arrived, sharp and cold, a perfect reflection of the mood. I dressed meticulously, a navy pantsuit, clean lines, silver cuff links, and my grandmother's sapphire ring. It was an outfit that whispered, I don't work for you, but you'll wish I did. At exactly 9 a.m., I stepped into a private boardroom, reserved by the Techline board for a confidential off-site review. The receptionist greeted me with unsettling deference. Dr. Monroe, they're expecting you. Inside, Richard Alvarez, the chairman, stood to greet me. Thank you for coming, Olivia. We appreciate you making the time. Of course, I said, shaking his hand. The room was hushed. 6 board members sat at a dark walnut table, their faces a mix of neutral and profoundly uncomfortable. They weren't sure how I'd show up. Angry, bitter, smug. Instead, I brought calm. I understand you've asked for some insight into the Chronocore situation, I began. Richard nodded gravely. It's escalated beyond what we anticipated. I figured it might, I said. I placed a sleek leather folder on the table. In here, you'll find a timeline of events, emails, correspondence, financial filings, all of which confirm that Chronocore was fully acquired by Verity Partners 3 weeks ago. We are now the exclusive provider of your AI systems architecture and own the data modules currently powering over 60% of your next-gen rollout. Silence hung heavy, and I continued, my voice measured. You'll find that at the time of acquisition, I was no longer employed by Techline, which means legally there is no conflict of interest. Only a failure to recognize operational risk on your current leadership's part. A board member in a gray suit leaned forward, his voice tight. Why didn't Damon flag this? Perhaps, I said, looking him dead in the eye, because he didn't see it coming. That landed. I watched them shift uncomfortably. Richard cleared his throat. He told us the vendor disruption was due to internal politics, that Chronocore had overextended. I shook my head. Chronocore is more stable now than it's been in 5 years. What's unstable is Damon's assumption that cutting out institutional knowledge was the best path forward. I paused, then added softly, sometimes the bottleneck isn't the one who's slow. It's the one who doesn't know what they're holding back. Later that day, back at Verity, I met with my new executive team. We were reviewing the final terms of the updated licensing agreement. The one Techline was now being urged to sign. It's generous, Michelle commented. We even included a 6-month grace period at their old pricing to ease the blow. They won't see it that way, I replied. But it's fair. We're not here to punish. We're here to protect our product and set a precedent. Our CTO, Eli, then pulled up a live dashboard of incoming client inquiries. Since the press release, he said, we've had 12 enterprise-level companies reach out. Some of them Techline's biggest competitors. 2 names jumped out at me immediately. Clients I'd chased for years at Techline, only to be told they were out of reach. Now they were knocking on my door. By Friday, the Techline board had called an emergency executive session. Clara kept me updated. Rumor is Damon won't survive the weekend. They've pulled his calendar access. Legal's involved. Then she added a delicious tidbit. He just realized the DevOps team copied you on the last documentation repo before you left. Audit trails prove you were working in good faith the entire time. It's unraveling. I stared at that word, unraveling. It didn't bring me joy. It brought closure. This wasn't about revenge. It was about recognition, about being pushed aside told you're in the way after 6 years of building something from the ground up. It was about showing them exactly what happened when they dismissed the woman who had read every line of code, built every partnership, and mentored half the people now desperately try to hold their company together. That evening, just before I closed my laptop for the weekend, a new email popped up, formal response to licensing proposal from Richard Alvarez. The board had reviewed Verity Partners' proposal and was prepared to accept the terms as outlined. But then the next line hit me. We also wish to extend an apology for the way your departure was handled. We understand this does not change the past, but we hope it opens the door to a more respectful, professional relationship moving forward. Thank you for your time and for reminding us what true leadership looks like. I read it twice, then a third time. I forwarded it to Michelle. Her reply was instant. Well, that's about as close to a corporate confession as you're going to get. I leaned back in my chair, watching the city lights flicker outside my window. The world below was still buzzing, people rushing, chasing, climbing. But me, I wasn't climbing anymore. I had arrived. Monday morning began too quietly, that eerie calm before the roof caves in. I walked into Verity's headquarters, coffee in hand, and opened my inbox. There was a flood of overnight alerts, press inquiries, internal updates. The story had broken. CEO ousted in corporate shakeup. Techline board removes Damon Reeves amid vendor crisis. The headlines were everywhere. Tech blogs, financial news, even a LinkedIn trend, #leadership matters. I clicked, scanning for familiar names. The article quoted a board source saying Damon's failure to assess critical supplier risks, combined with the abrupt loss of Chronicor, had caused irreversible reputational damage and jeopardized multiple product lines. He was out, effective immediately. Clara confirmed it within the hour. It's real. Damon cleared his desk at 7 a.m. No speech, no drama, didn't even make eye contact. She told me the interim CEO was a total cleanup guy, and they were rebranding the AI Ops Hub, calling it the Ghost Project internally. She followed it with a gif of someone dumping water on a fire. I smiled. But even amid all this chaos, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt steady resolved. Because while Damon's fall had been inevitable, what came next mattered so much more. At 11 a.m., I walked into our product lab for a team debrief. Our engineers were buzzing, preparing technical rollouts for new enterprise clients, many of whom had reached out after seeing Techline publicly stumble. Eli, our CTO, pulled me aside. You're not going to believe this, he said, his eyes gleaming. Techline sent over a draft of the public licensing agreement. They actually included your name. I blinked. You're joking. Not even a little, he replied. Technology developed by Olivia Monroe, licensed exclusively through Verity Partners. Front and center. Legal must have forced it through. I stared at the document. Seeing my name, official, public, undeniable, was like taking my first breath after months underwater. They've never said it before, I whispered. Not once. Not when I built the system. Not when it launched. Not even after the first 1 million users. Well, Eli said, a knowing smile. They're saying it now, loud and clear. By Tuesday, we held a private strategy session to review the incoming migration requests. 12 former Techline clients had asked to demo our new architecture. 3 of them had been considered untouchable accounts when I worked there. Executives would dismiss the idea before I even finished my pitch. But now they were knocking. Not because of a flashy deck or clever marketing, but because they finally saw what I had always been saying. The value wasn't in the brand. It was in the work. That afternoon, I received a call from someone I hadn't spoken to in years, Layla Grant. She'd been one of the only other senior women in Techline's leadership during my early years. Smart, ambitious, but also empathetic. We'd worked side by side until she was edged out 2 years before me. Olivia, she said, her voice filled with emotion. I've been watching this whole thing unfold. You have no idea what it's done for the women still in tech, especially those of us over 40. I was quiet for a moment, unsure how to respond. You didn't just win, Layla continued. You proved that dignity and patience can coexist with strategy, that you can outthink someone without stooping to their level. It's rare, and it's powerful. Her words stayed with me long after we hung up. Because this was the impact I hadn't expected. It wasn't just about a comeback. It was about a message. You can fight back without becoming the villain. By Wednesday, Techline issued a formal company-wide announcement. It confirmed their strategic agreement with Verity Partners for continued access to the Chronocore platform. And buried quietly at the bottom was a single line acknowledging me by name. No adjectives, no embellishments, just facts. It was enough. Meanwhile, our marketing team at Verity was finalizing a keynote presentation I'd been invited to deliver at the Global Technology Leadership Forum next month. The title, When the System Says You're Replaceable and You Prove It Wrong. That evening, I returned home to find a handwritten note in my mailbox. No return address, just a simple card, one line. You've become the story I tell my daughter when she thinks she's not strong enough. No name, no signature, just that. I held the card in my chest, letting myself feel it. Not pride, not vengeance, just clarity. This wasn't about what they had taken from me. It was about what I had reclaimed. My name, my work, my worth. And I wasn't done yet. 1 year after I carried my life out of Techline's glass tower in a plain cardboard box, I walked into Verity's headquarters. The morning light spilled across the polished floors. It felt like a quiet milestone. No fanfare, no announcements, just the gentle click of my heels and the steady hum of a company I had rebuilt from the ground up. Eli waved me down from the strategy room. "You're going to want to see this," he grinned. I stepped inside. Our analytics dashboard glowed on the wall, cycling through live client data. The numbers were impossible to ignore. 98% client retention, 14 new enterprise onboardings last quarter, 31% revenue growth year over year. Then Eli brought up the most satisfying figure of all, Techline's projected market share loss, a staggering 27%. 9 of their top 20 former accounts have migrated to Verity infrastructure, he said. They tried to downplay it first, but investors are asking questions, and now, finally, they're answering. My breath hitched. Answering how? He turned the screen to show me their official statement, just posted on Techline's investor relations site. We acknowledge that strategic missteps, including the mishandling of key partnerships, contributed to the challenges we faced last year. We also recognize the foundational work of former executives, including Olivia Monroe, in building the operational systems that continue to shape the market. They said it, not behind closed doors, not a whispered apology, but publicly. My name, in print, attached to my work. I leaned against the table, quiet for a long moment. Eli watched me, then added, "It's not everything, but it's something." "It's enough," I said. I didn't need credit. I needed truth. Later that day, I reviewed the latest reports from our legal team. 3 more licensing agreements finalized. One of them, Techline's oldest partner, now fully transitioned to our system. Michelle sent me a message shortly after. They're going to try to buy time with new branding, new leadership, and PR campaigns. But the core problem still stands. They forgot the people who built their foundation, and you reminded them without ever raising your voice. I didn't reply immediately. I just sat there rereading her message, letting it settle. Because that was it, wasn't it? All the strategy, all the quiet moves, all the times I stayed calm when they expected me to break. It wasn't about ego. It was about proving that grace and power aren't mutually exclusive. That evening, walking through Verity's quiet halls, I noticed something new near the entryway. A framed plaque, one I hadn't approved, but immediately recognized. It read, "The real legacy of innovation is not the product. It's the people who make it possible." Underneath it, in smaller text, was my name. I stood there for a long time, staring at the reflection of the hallway lights in the glass. Then my phone buzzed. A message from Clara. "Just wanted you to know I officially start Monday. Thank you for keeping the door open. It feels like I'm coming home." I smiled. Clara, loyal to a fault, had been one of the last to leave Techline, but now she was finally ready to grow beyond what that place ever allowed her to become. "Welcome back," I replied. "There's so much more we're going to build." At home that night, I pulled a small box from the back of my closet. It still held some things from that final day at Techline. My mug, my team's farewell note, the pen they gave me when we crossed that $50 million revenue mark. I looked at each item, not with sadness, but with clarity. Those years hadn't been wasted. They had shaped me, tempered me. They had made this moment possible. A year ago, they told me I was a bottleneck. What they never understood was that I wasn't holding the company back. I was holding it together. And now I was building something even stronger on my own terms, with the right people, and with my name exactly where it belonged. Not hidden in the footnotes, not tucked into someone else's speech, but written clearly, boldly, permanently at the very heart of the story.